Hello everyone, in this tutorial I will show you how to use interfaces to interact with different objects. For example, I can open and close the door, I can open the chest, or I can start interaction between characters. Every object has a different implementation using the same interface. If you don't use interfaces, your code would look something like this. You would try to get a different component for each object and call a function from that script. This can work fine if you have a couple of objects to interact with, but if you have a lot of objects, this is not practical. We can replace all of that with this. Let's see how it works. To create an interface, we will create a new C# script. Since we want to interact with other objects, call it IInteractable. Naming is optional, but it's common practice to put the letter I in front of the desired name, like IInteractable, IDamageable, or ISubscribe, and so on. In the script, we can delete default functions, and we don't want to inherit from monobehavior. Then let's replace class with the keyword interface. Now we can define function or functions. I'm going to define a function called InteractLogic. Notice that the function is empty, with no functionality. Interfaces are like contracts. Every class that inherits, or better say implements this interface, must implement this function. What the function will do is defined by every class separately. Let me show you. Here I have the chest object. I will explain other components in a moment. Now let's open the chest script. To implement the interface, write a comma after monobehavior and then the name of the interface. You will notice one error. Since we inherit from the interface, we must implement the function. To finish implementation, we can right-click, go to Quick Actions and Refactoring, and choose the option to implement the interface. That will create a public function InteractLogic. Nice. Now we can determine what this function will do. As you can see, here I have one open chest function that will change the sprite of the chest and disable the collider. You can do whatever you need. Then we call it inside InteractLogic. Now let's implement the interface to other classes. I will open the script on the door object. Again, the same procedure. Here I want to use the function that will open and close the door. Notice that every class has its own implementation of the same interface, and that is the idea. The last implementation will be for this little guy. For example purposes, I just enable the object that starts the animation. I repeat, inside the InteractLogic you can do whatever you need. Now we need to somehow call the InteractLogic function. Let's go to Unity. I use the new input system. When I press E, I want to try to interact with objects. If you want to know more about the new input system, please check my courses. Next, I will select the player and open the player controls script. This is the function that is called every time I press E. Inside this function, we need to call InteractLogic. So let's create one IInteractable instance. First, we will check that the instance is not null, then we call InteractLogic. Of course, somehow we need to populate this instance and assign value. Create one public function setInstance that will take one IInteractable parameter. Then set our instance to the interactable object that we pass through the function. We also need one public function that will set the instance to null. In Unity, make sure that the player has the tag player. If we, for example, select the chest, you will see that it has rigidbody 2D and box collider 2D. The collider needs to be a trigger. You can adjust it as you wish. In the chest script, we need a reference to the player controls. We use onTriggerEnter2D and onTriggerExit2D. When any object enters the trigger, we check the tag. If that is the player, then get the player controls component and pass this object as an instance. The idea is that we can pass any class that implements the interface. When the player exits the trigger, then clear the instance. You can do the same for the door and our friend Krabby. Let's test it. I will enter the trigger. The instance is set. I can press E and interact with the object. The same is for the door or any object that implements the IInteractable interface. Hope you learned something new and have a nice day.